Yeah, and very interesting sort of counterpoints there that I accept in that you have a lot of legacy players who are building software in the traditional, we can call it Web 1.0 state. And that's frustrating and annoying. But I don't think that in itself is enough to be, unseated for me, or at least for you, surely, right? You mentioned lease accounting rules and regulations changing. And I'm assuming the pandemic, one hell of a trend, right, created a new set of problems to solve. Had those two things not been in place, surely it would have been a lot harder. It would have been harder to get the attention of the customer set. Or do you feel like, no, even without that, UX is so important that UX itself is enough to disrupt and deceive?
No, you have to have a real problem to solve. And especially when you have two huge ones at the same time, I mean, that's obviously, that's where the opportunity, when there's churn in the market, that's where the opportunity comes out of. But regulations are a great thing to build products around, right? The government says, hey, there's a new law that says you have to do this. Look at the transportation industry, right? If you're a transportation company, I'm sure there's, numerous laws that you have to comply with. If you don't know them, that's not your job, is knowing the law. Then someone's going to step in and create a product that allows you to be in compliance with those laws. So I think there's I agree with you. You can't just say, you know what, I'm gonna pick an industry and just go build a more beautiful looking product and say that I'm gonna go beat everybody by selling this.
Yeah, exactly. It's not enough. And one thought a lot of founders have is, well, let me price this at a discount to what the current market offers. It still isn't enough. In fact, there's a perception too that, look, we've got budget for this, we're happy to keep spending it, and there must be something wrong with your product. It takes a while for some people to understand that free isn't good. You should charge because you're expected to charge, right?
But as an entrepreneur, wouldn't you want to charge more money for your product? And the only way you're going to charge more money is that there's more value there.
Well, there's two different camps, right? There's the camp where I want to build Facebook and I want to, make it free, and I'll make revenue later on the back end through data. And I don't think that pitch works very well in proptech. It doesn't. It works really well in other industries. For proptech, in most cases, I don't think so. The other approach is we have a really clear value proposition. We solve a problem in a way others don't. We're not, and this is what I've heard you say, we're not changing the business model of our company. You don't have to come in necessarily and have a disrupted business model. You need to solve a really clear problem. And if you can point that problem to a regulatory change or a nature in the dynamics of the marketplace, like, COVID's completely changed the way offices are run and managed, right?
Yep.
If you can if you can ride those trends, you still need to do everything else perfectly. You still need to have the right pricing. You still need to have amazing UX. It's still not enough, but you definitely need those, I think, as a precursor. Now, I'm sure viewers are listening and thinking, well, I can think of, 1, 2, 3 examples that contradict that. Well, we're talking about patterns here. We're talking about proptech generally. There's always an exception to the rule.
Yeah.
The other thing, and you've been in this industry for a while, the one thing you can bet on is that I believe as a founder, you should always think your competitors are cutthroat and they're, like 10 steps ahead of you. But the reality is, they're not. They're very slow. They're very archaic. And the fact that they're entrenched in their position makes them lazy. If they've been acquired, and I don't know if you can speak to this, but you've seen acquisitions happen all over the front, right? The founding spirit is lost and things just become part of the corporate machine. And that also leaves them vulnerable to, annoy their customers. And there's your opportunity as a startup.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I think there's like this almost kind of like off-gassing of those Web 1.0 customers back into the market who are like, the company that I signed up for 7 years ago isn't that cool anymore, and they're not really that responsive, and they haven't really innovated that much. And hey, my contract's coming up. I'm going to explore the market. Oh, look, there's this new company out here that's way better, and they do all this other stuff, and they want their product managers to get on the phone with me and really get my feedback. And you have to keep that startup spirit alive, or you're gonna get unseated yourself for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's talk a bit about what's happening with the world of work. At the time of recording this podcast, it feels like we're out of the pandemic, and it feels like this is the first attempt for people to go back to well, I don't want to say go back to an office environment. I actually want to ask you, what is the status quo right now? What's happening really? How does the future of work currently look like? Which direction is it heading in? And are there persona types? Are companies doing things differently? And how do you categorize the way people are reopening?
It's random. I still think that, I mean, okay, let's just say that we're out of the pandemic, which, we're probably technically not, but it feels like we are in many places, right? So you have businesses who are now faced with the question of like, okay, how are we going to go back to work? Well, you can ask a lot of businesses that we never left work. We just kind of moved it around. So it's going to require even more empathy for the employee now. And because 2 years, we all been working from home. Some people, I was on the phone, I was interviewing somebody today actually for a key role. And, he works from home, but he likes to go into the office. But he realized by working from home, he could actually be closer to his kids from time to time. He could, get things done that he normally wouldn't be able to do during the work week. And that's not to say that I assumed he was slacking off, but that's true. There's more to life than your job. And especially with the idea of commuting, it makes people less likely to want to sit in their car for an hour on their way into the city. So those factors, I think, need to be looked at seriously because I think the workplace is really wherever somebody can do their best work. And I think I saw a headline the other day that Jamie Dimon, has lost to the work from home crowd, right? Because he was the first guy that was like, hey, we want you back in the office. We need people here. And whether you agree with that or not, that was someone has to take a stance and draw a line. But I think the reality is after 2 years of giving people a little bit more flexibility and freedom, you can't act like that because everyone's going to be dusting off the resume. So I think that you have to have the empathy for the employee. From our perspective, we've grown headcount wise throughout the last 2 years of the pandemic. And it's actually been very helpful for us because it's broken down the borders of where you can hire awesome talent. We're in Boston, we have 2 hubs, one in Boston and one in New York. And we've opened our offices back up, but we haven't forced people to say, we need you in here 2-3 days a week. It's we have an office, we love to collaborate, come on in. But if you can't, we understand your best work is, at your home setup, then by all means, get it done. And then I think companies will start to shift the way they use their space. They won't lease as many big headquarters locations. They might do the hub and spoke model a little bit more, or they might not lease as much space at all, and they'll get their teams together remotely more frequently in shared or communal office settings or just offsites. So I think what we're going to plan to do is have offices where it makes sense from a center of gravity perspective, and then get our teams together as frequently as we can. For camaraderie's sake, but for also just, synchronous working and stuff like that. So I don't know. I wish I had an answer that, tells you by this date, the world's going to go back to the way it was, but I just don't think it is.
And neither can you tell us, I'm seeing, these 4 categories or these 2 categories with companies. Is it truly random? You're not seeing patterns?
Well, yeah, we have a pattern. 2021, we pulled some data on in our system, and we learned that of the clients that we have that are office occupier clients on a cohort basis, they expanded their footprints in 2021 by 30%. When I say footprint, I mean number of leases, not square footage. Wow. So what that tells us is that businesses that have people space are actually opening more offices, which is probably a reaction to having an office in closer proximity to more people rather than having one central headquarters and a CBD that people want to go into. So I think people are going to start spreading out their office portfolios, which will mean more leases in more locations rather than having that big, headquarters lease on the West Coast and on the East Coast. And I think there's 2 benefits to that. One is you provide more flexibility to your employees, but it also allows you to recruit more areas than you normally wouldn't have thought of.
Matt, what was your philosophy prior to the pandemic? So, I don't want to hear philosophy now. It looks like everyone is more progressive and is what you describe. But before all this, an office type of person?
I've always been an office type of person, my personal philosophy. Fortunate enough to be one of the owners of my company and can kind of dictate where my office is. So I have a 8-minute walk home, but so that allows me to jump home and pick up the kids on, from the bus when I have to. And there's some flexibility just based on proximity for me. But I work better when I have a separation of environments. I just like the idea of getting up in the morning, going to the gym, and then heading into the office and having certain times to focus on certain things. If I'm at home, I'm less productive personally. I'm just going to go down to the kitchen, grab a snack. That makes me make a cup of coffee. I look at my phone 20 minutes later, I've just burned a half an hour. So for me, for my money, I like being in the office. Now that doesn't mean I'm ever going to force other people to do stuff like that. But pre-pandemic, I was in the office every day.
So, and it sounds like you still are in the office every day. You need that separation. You're not a hybrid type of person, at least hybrid in the sense that, work from home Monday, Tuesdays, go to the office Wednesday, Thursday, Fridays. Sounds to me like you work well in an office environment, and that's a prototype of many people too, obviously. I guess it comes down to personality, right? Or does it come down to home setup? Because not everyone has the luxury of having a home setup.
That's true. Yeah, that's really true. That's why I go back to the fact that you got to be more empathetic to the employee, because everybody's got a different situation, right? When we were peak pandemic and my wife and I were both working from home, we had to buy 2 desks. We put one in our bedroom. We put one down in the main living area, and she's downstairs on calls. I'm upstairs on calls. I'm literally spending 16 hours a day in my bedroom. I sleep there and I work there.
Sometimes, it's not good.
Yeah. So for me, I didn't like that, but other people might love it. I don't know. And so when I work from home today, it's more out of necessity. My kids aren't in school today, so I'm going to work from home and, try to be a dad at the same time. Or, I have to be at an appointment in the afternoon. So there's no sense in going to the office for the day if I have to go somewhere. So I'll start from the morning in the office or in the home or something like that.